Okay. Matthew 15th chapter, and I have Mark verse 21. We're going to continue in our study of Matthew till John gets back. And just to fill in tonight, we talked pretty extensively about chapter 15 here about Jesus teaching his disciples about defilement and what truly defiles a man. And obviously for me, when I was reading studying for this lesson, the Pharisees, the scribes that were trying to, as always, they're trying to trap Jesus at every turn. And so I really have a hard time believing that they were so naive as to believe that, if you don't wash your hands before you eat, well, you was in some sort of mortal sin. But that being said, they had, by their traditions, accepted the fact that their tradition was now on par with God's commands, and so Jesus has rebuked them in that regard and said that they had made the commands of God of none effect by their traditions. And so therefore where they wound up was their worship to God was vain. It was useless. And the reason being that they had substituted the commandments of men for the commandments of God. And so that Jesus clearly teaching that it's not what goes into the man that defiles, it's what comes out of the man. And as I said at the beginning of the study, this study in Matthew 15 was about two things: about authority, and it was about the heart. And I suppose we could say that everything that we study from the Scripture, from Genesis to Revelation, winds up in application about the heart. For if a man's heart is not right before God, then whatever worship or reverence that he might pay to God is of no use. It's vanity. And so we've got ourselves down to verse 21, as Jesus has, verse 19, he says that out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies, and these are the things which defile the man, but not because they haven't washed their hands. And again, just to make us a little light point, we're going to move on. For me, it's a good thing to wash your hands before you eat, but that's not what defiles a man. So, Jesus now, verse 21, this is interesting here in this discourse here, for the response that his disciples had. I want you to read and listen and pay particular attention to the response of the disciples to this Canaanite woman. So Jesus went there and departed in the coast of Tyre and Sidon. He didn't go to the cities of Tyre and Sidon, just the outskirts, the coast. And behold, a woman of Canaan came out of the same coast and cried unto him, saying, Have mercy on me, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with a devil. Now, this is a Canaanite woman. She's not a Jew. But she recognized Jesus as what? Thou son of David. And this is something that many of the Jews haven't even picked up on yet. That Jesus is of the lineage, or he's the son of David. He's in that lineage. He says, but she cries out to him, recognizing him as the Messiah, thou son of David. He said, my daughter is grievously vexed with the devil. Now, as I was studying this, my mind went to Zechariah 13, verse 1 and 2. And I make this point because there's a lot of folks who for some reason, want to believe that demon possession and things of that nature still happens today. And it did obviously happen in the New Testament times, and it was for a specific reason that the demons were allowed, or people were vexed with these evil spirits. It was to show the power of God, the power of Jesus and the disciples, the apostles, to cast them out, and confirming the word with miracles of signs following. But Zechariah 13, verse 1 and 2 tells us that in that day he would cause the prophet and the unclean spirit to pass out of the land. So it's talking about the day that Jesus was going to come and he's going to begin his ministry. There's coming a time, in other words, that these devils, these unclean spirits, would have no more sway over man. And so they're going to pass out of the land. They had served their purpose. And that's one point I wanted to make and have us to catalog in our minds, that this was for a reason. Romans 8 verse 28 tells us that all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. And that means that all things taken into consideration are of God's design and his plan, working for his end. Work for the good. It's going to further his cause. So this Canaanite woman came and she begged mercy. She hollered at Jesus and said, "Have mercy on me, thou son, O Lord, thou son of David. My daughter is grievously vexed with the devil." But he answered her not a word. He didn't say nothing to her. And his disciples came and besought him, saying, "Send her away, for she cries after us." Now, that's what I want you to pick up on, what these disciples said. She came to Jesus, recognizing who he was, begging for mercy on her daughter's behalf, that her daughter was possessed or vexed with this devil. But Jesus said not a word. He didn't say a word to her. And it's almost like he just turned a deaf ear and a blind eye. But to this woman who was crying out to him for mercy. But and his disciples is what's interesting here. His disciples, when she cried out to him and Jesus didn't answer her, they said, "Send her away, for she cries after us." No. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, in that context, maybe the disciples picked up on, well, our Savior, our Jesus, he ain't said nothing to that woman. So let's press them into saying what they did. Yep. Because Jesus didn't say anything, so they thought they were doing him a favor, by going ahead and just send her away. And then that she bothered.
I believe you're on the right track. What the disciples were saying here, give her what she wants so she'll go away, because she's crying after us. And that's borne out when we read the rest of this. This is the mindset that the disciples have. They said to Jesus, she's begging from her, give her what she wants so she'll leave us alone, that she doesn't cry out after us anymore. But he answered her. He answered the disciples and said, "I am not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel." You see, he set in place now his mission. It's not that he was ignoring the woman, because we're going to see just a little bit later she gets what she's asking for. But his purpose was to go to the children of Israel first. That was the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That was his mission. And he was not sent unto anyone else except to them at this time. Okay? That's his answer. That's why he didn't say nothing to her. His purpose was to go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And she came and worshipped him, saying, "Lord, help me." But he answered and said, listen, this is very interesting. He said, "It's not meet or honorable or good, if you will, to take the children's bread and to cast it to dogs. That sounds awful harsh, doesn't it? This woman crying out after him for mercy, and she came and she fell at his feet, worshiping him, and he's identified two classes of people here. He said the children who rightly deserved all of the bread, the good stuff, and then the dogs who, if they eat anything at all, it's going to be what falls from the table. Yes, sir?
My version calls it the little dogs.
A little dog?
Yeah, and her answer also said later, yes, Lord, yet the little dogs eat the crumbs. So, I don't know, kind of like puppies, you know.
Yeah.
When we eat, might be little puppies down there, waiting for something to eat.
Yeah, but here, I believe the point is that,
But it's not fit to give it to the dogs.
sir,
But it's not fit to give it to the dogs.
Right. What he has to give is, he sent to the lost house of the sheep of Israel, how did he say that? Lost sheep of the house of Israel.
Correct.
And he has bread, he has food, he has something to feed them with, and it's rightly theirs. And so the dogs are not even under consideration. Little dog, or however, whatever translation may say, but the point is, he's not giving that which is holy to the dogs. Okay? But listen, and she responded with a remarkable statement. And she said, this is a Canaanite woman. She's a Gentile woman. And she said, truth. Truth, Lord. You said the truth. That is the truth. It's not right to give to the children's bread and to cast it out to dogs. She said, that's true. That is a true statement. And then she said, yet the dogs eat of the crumbs which fall from the master's table. Now, we see a sign of humility, a sign of humbleness. She's not being, what's the word I'm looking for? Haughty about this. She's, well, I'm as good as they are, or something of that nature. She said, you're right, but Lord, please. In a humble request, she said, even the dogs eat of the crumbs that fall from the master's table. Could I have those? That's, and she said, you said a right word. Yes, sir, go ahead.
She was showing her, recognizing that even her request was just a crumb. So at least you could give me a crumb, and he commended her for her faith.
Exactly, and he's going to make that point, verse 28, when she says, that's the truth, Master. That's the truth, Lord. But even the crumbs that fall from the children's table, or from the master's table, the dogs eat. And they're taking care, they eat their fill, as many crumbs as is available. But Jesus answered and said unto her, O woman, great is thy faith. Great is thy faith. Satisfied with little crumbs. That's okay. Just let me have the crumbs. Great is thy faith. Be it unto thee even as thou wilt. And her daughter was made whole from that very hour. It winds up a really beautiful story to where Christ has compassion on this Canaanite woman, but he's sent to the lost, let's say that, lost sheep of the house of Israel. And his mission is focused. He's going to them. He's not giving anything that's holy to the dogs. But this Canaanite woman recognized that was a profound truth. And Jesus said, your faith and the fact that you have humbled yourself before me, your faith is so great, then be it unto you as you would have it to be. And she came asking for her daughter, and her daughter was healed that very hour. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, he probably could have said this in another way, but when Jesus was talking about the it's not good to take the children's bread. Now, he's talking about Israel here. The children is reference to Israel. And give it to the little dogs, and which is reference as being the Gentiles. The little dogs are the Gentiles. And she come back and said that, you know, even they'll get to eat from the master's crumbs from the master's table. In other words, I'm listening to what you're feeding to Israel here, and I'm picking up on it. And I call you son of Satan. So, in the context of it, we go back up and pick up another verse. He says, "I was not sent except as the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So that's what we refer to as the Lenitic Commission, which eventually evolved to the Great Commission that involves Gentiles and Jews and everybody alike. But that's not, like you said, that was Christ. His obligation when he first showed up on the scene was, don't go in the way of the Gentiles, but go to the lost sheep of Israel. And but that prophet Christ at one time, as we quote a lot of scriptures, said, you know, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, how often I gathered you like a hen gathers its chicks, but you would not."
Right.
And when they killed Jesus, then God, that broke what kind of referred to as a marriage between the children of Israel and Jesus and God. That broke that bond,
Right.
leaving him able to marry everybody. The gospel for everybody.
Well, it's and again, there's so many avenues that we could pursue in that regard. One of them that I picked up on to leave us with is the persistence of this woman in her approach to Jesus, and serves as an example of, for me, as I prayed to God, persistence in my supplications, persistence, faith, have my faith of such a nature and so great that I know He's going to answer my prayers. And some people say, well, he may say no, he may say wait, he may say okay. No, well, I don't know about all that, because by ask Him according to His will, and wait on the Lord, then whatever transpires in regards to my prayer is my answer. It may not be my exact expectation, but it's my answer. And but he hears my prayer because He keeps His commandment. 1 John 3:22. Please, Don.
I don't know where her faith came from. They don't tell us in this story.
Right.
But she recognized by calling Him the Son of David. There were many Judean men, yet very few of them were called the Son of David, even though they were of the house and lineage of David. This was a special recognition. And so she called Him the Son of David. She worshiped Him. She told Him, you're telling me the truth. Her heart was right with God. And therefore, because of that, she's been made famous throughout the centuries, throughout the millennia, as a person of great faith. That's, it's all kind of an amazing story that Matthew's telling us here. He's telling it, of course, through the Holy Spirit. I wonder what he thought at that particular moment. There and again, that would just be pure speculation. But anyway, this carries the story, and it makes a point to all of us. Get your heart right with God, and all kinds of good things can happen to you.
And I believe that's the core teaching here. Brother Paul pointed out in one of the lessons here is we don't want to discount faith, because Jesus clearly said, "Great is thy faith." Where she got that faith, like Don said, don't know. But that's not even the point to consider. She had faith, and it was as Don said, she was made famous from that hour throughout the century. Brother Johnny, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to say, to me, this is evidence to prove throughout the New Testament, when someone was healed, they were healed 100%. So when my generation growing up, the evangelists in the world, and they came on TV, you know, they'd say, testify, and this person would get up and say, God healed me, I can walk, and they come out with crutches, they come out with a cane. So to me, this is evidence to prove false teaching.
Yeah, and that's a good observation, you know. If God heals you, you don't get healed a little bit. You're not healed in increments, you heal totally. That's if this young lady was. Leonard?
I think that Jesus, because we know what God says, he knows the end at the beginning. Jesus allowed this to develop. Is there ever a time in the Bible where someone was demon possessed that it wasn't cast out? So this was a teaching method. That's what he was using this for. And it's why he allowed it to go and progress. Because I believe with all my heart that he knew what she was going to do. But he used it as a teaching method, as he does in the parables and everything else. And he shows that even there's coming a time, even for these people, that they're going to have the opportunity, which they'd always had the opportunity. They could have become proselytes, you know. But I believe that he let it unfold so more was able to see what was transpiring and to see the great faith, the end of that great faith.
Yeah, and again, you know, that's what you just said is Romans 8:28, where all things work together for the good of them that love the Lord. But all these things that work together is, like you said, Jesus let these things unfold for teaching at a particular time. He's trying to teach his disciples. If you go back and you look about this, what defiles a man, they asked Jesus about it. What does this mean? He said, "Are you still without understanding? Don't you understand yet?" You know, so he's let these things transpire or take place for the teaching, and it's to show compassion. And as Don said, this was a righteous woman. She was she's a believer. That's all you can say. She was a believer. She appealed to Jesus, and she ultimately her request was granted, and her daughter was healed. And but we're going to move on to verse 29 now. We have another instance where Jesus has compassion on the multitude, and he's going to feed 4,000. And so he departed from there and came nigh unto the Sea of Galilee, went up into a mountain and sat down there. A great multitude came unto him, having with them those that were lame, blind, dumb, maimed, and many others, and cast them down at Jesus' feet, and he healed them. And so this multitude came with the sole purpose of having Jesus do his thing. He performed his miracles and healed the folks. He says in verse 31, insomuch that the multitude wondered when they saw the dumb to speak, the maimed to be whole, the lame to walk, and the blind to see, and they glorified the God of Israel. Then Jesus called his disciples unto him and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me now 3 days, and have nothing to eat, and I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint in the way. And his disciples say unto him, where should we have so much bread in the wilderness? Or how should we have so much bread in the wilderness as to fill so great a multitude? And Jesus said unto them, how many loaves have you? And they said, 7, and a few little fishes. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. He took those 7 loaves and the fishes, gave thanks, and brake them, and gave to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude, and they did all eat, and were filled, and they took up of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets full, and they did eat. They that did eat were 4,000 men, besides women and children. And he sent away the multitude, and took ship, and came into the coast of Magdala. Now, just for the sake of continuing the study along, we just keep it simple. Jesus, he goes to this place. These people follow him, not for any other reason other than to have some kind of healing done. They brought all these folks in that were needed healing, and Jesus healed them. And then he fed them. He had compassion on them. And he fed them, and then he sent them away. And then he got into a ship and come to this place called Magdala. And that whole story there, for me, was an introduction to chapter 16, verse 1. It's an introduction because the Pharisees, also with the Sadducees, okay, they're the 2 important groups of people here. They came and tempting, desiring him that he would show them a sign from heaven. And I laughed because what did we just read? The lame, the blind, the dumb, all these people were healed.
Plenty of signs from heaven.
They were all healed, and then these people come and they say, we would see a sign from you. I'm just taken back by that statement. Well, where were you at when all this was going on? You know, okay, but we're going to get into a sign. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, just an inquisitive type of a question here. This 4,000 people, not counting women and children, this great multitude of people. Who was were these mostly Jews or Gentiles or a mixture of both?
That's a good. Just speculating. It was all the people of the coast that lived in around the coast of Tyre and Sidon. It could have been a mixture. Obviously, there was a Canaanite woman there.
But because it always just shocked me to think that after Christ got through doing all this healing of all different kinds of ailments, lame, crippled, and blind, and deaf, and mute, and so on and so on, and all these people think, especially if that's the multitude, mostly were Jews, why didn't they raise more of a ruckus, against the leadership of the Jewish nation, after they seen all these miracles that he done, he got to be confessing, he got to be the Son of God. Yeah. And you wonder why they didn't take up for it more than they did.
I guess that's a question for Don.
If I see somebody raised from the dead and they all these different people healed like they were, I'm sticking with you. I'm not going to give my voice against crucifying you.
Well, again, all this we just read was I'm reading this, and I get to chapter 16, verse 1, and I'm just dumbfounded. We seek the sign from you. Go ahead, Don.
Bear in mind while we're discussing this is the Pharisees and the Sadducees getting together to tempt Jesus. Now, what is it that takes 2 enemies and brings them together to oppose the truth? They hated the truth.
Sounds a whole lot like
It was a
Congress.
threat to them.
Sounds like our Congress today, don't
Like we talked about not long ago, Larry, this unity through diversity. That's kind of like the Sadducees and Pharisees was, Pharisees believed in the resurrection, Sadducees don't. But we're going to get along here for a little while, we'll just be unified through this, what we disagree with for a while, or the cause will get rid of this man Jesus.
Yeah, we'll be friends till we crucify him, then we'll hate each other later. But they said, it said, show me a sign from heaven. And he answered and said unto them, when it's evening, you say it will be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning it will be foul weather today, for the sky is red and lowering. O ye hypocrites, you can discern the face of the sky, but you cannot discern the signs of the times. You want a sign, and you can look at the sky and tell whether we're going to have fair weather or bad weather, and you can't discern the signs of the times. Times that, you know, in the last, was the scripture tells us, in the last day, evil men will wax worse and worse, and who can deny that today? I mean, look around. I mean, our world has gone to pot, and I'm not talking about stuff that's smoked. I'm talking about stuff that it's just going to ruination. It's just people ain't got no sense no more. But this is the answer he gave them. He called them a hypocrite. Why don't you use those same abilities to discern what you can obviously see, and you can obviously see what I just did, but you can't discern the times, but you want a sign from heaven. This is on my mind. I got to tell you, years ago there was a guy that served 20 years in the penitentiary for raping his daughter. And he had been a member of the church at one time. And when he got out, he wanted to know where I live. I'm the one taught him the gospel. Baptized him, and he was faithful for a long time. But anyway, he done this evil. And he got out of prison, and he wanted to know where I live. Well, I was a little bit hesitant to tell him where I live. You know, I didn't see no signs of change. Anyway, long story short, I finally gave in and told him where I live. Tongue in cheek, 38 in my waistband. You know, I didn't know what to expect from this guy. But I said all that to say this. When he finally came to my house, this is what he said. He said, you know, Larry, he said, all them years I was in prison, he said, I was looking for a sign from God. And he said, I'm still looking for a sign from God. I said, well, what kind of sign do you want? What is it? You're still walking. You're still walking on His earth, breathing His air. The sun's still shining on your body, and you survived 20 years in prison. You've done your time for that evil deed you did. What kind of sign do you want? You want God to do some kind of miracle so your faith will be strengthened? And then this is what, you know, when I read stuff like this kind of gets under my skin a little bit. People, they want a sign. They want to see God do some kind of miracle, you know. And I got to tell you, brother, when I wake up in the mornings with all my aches and pains, and I got to put my teeth in, and you know, I've got to brush the uppers and brush the lowers and throw them in there so I can eat breakfast, and all of that stuff that goes on. My shoulders are hurting, my head hurts, my hip hurts, I can't hardly walk, and all of that kind of stuff. I'm still thankful. I'll give thanks to the Lord that I'm still here. I don't need a sign. I don't need a sign. I walk by faith and not by sight, and that's a little radical. Okay, but anyway, these people here, they want a sign, and he says, you're hypocrites. He said, and a wicked, this is the deal here in verse 4, a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. A wicked and adulterous generation seeks after a sign. And no sign shall be given unto it but the sign of the prophet Jonah. Everybody knows about Jonah. Everybody. Nobody can deny. Some people say, well, there's no way that giant fish could swallow a man. Yeah, he is. God told him to. If God told a minnow to swallow Jonah, that minnow would choke him down. God said it, it happened, and the prophet Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a giant fish. I call it a whale. Okay? What's the sign there? Everybody knows the sign. Everybody knows 3 days, 3 nights, and then the resurrection. 3 days, 3 nights, and resurrection. That's the sign. It's coming. That's the sign that's going to be given to these people who seek for a sign, who walk by and see Christ hanging on the cross and look up at him and scoff and say, oh, he saved others, recognizing his power to save. Okay? But he can't save himself. Well, obviously they wasn't saved. He saved others, but he can't save himself. 3 days and 3 nights, that's the sign. And he left them and departed. That's all he said. Now you reckon he left them kind of foggy in the brain, not understanding? Jonah, what happened to Jonah? Anybody got the scroll? You know, let's turn back, let's find out what happened to Jonah. What happened to Jonah? What is it? Well, the scroll says he was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a big fish. Okay, what is it? What is it? Go back over here to the blind, he made him to see. The deaf, he made him to hear. 3 days, 3 nights. He's talking about his death, burial, and his resurrection. That's the sign that's going to be given. I saw the Pharisees and Sadducees, when his disciples, in verse 5, will come to the other side, they had forgotten to take bread. Okay, they forgot their lunch or something to eat. And Jesus said to them, take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. Now you see what Leonard said. He's letting this unfold. He's using this bread as it unfolds to teach them a spiritual lesson. Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and of the Sadducees. And immediately, these disciples, they got it going on now. They're really intelligent men. This is what they said. They reasoned among themselves, he said that because we don't have no bread. No, that's not what he said. Think, brethren. Think, disciples. And when Jesus perceived that, he said unto them, O ye of little faith, why reason ye among yourselves, because you have brought no bread? I just took this bread and fed 4,000 people plus. And you thinking that I'm worried about bread? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm telling you is that the doctrine, the teaching, he just said in Matthew 15, verse 8 and 9, for vain do you worship me, teaching for doctrine and commandments of men. I'm telling you, beware of the leaven, the teaching, the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Do you not understand, verse 9, neither remember the 5 loaves of 5,000, how many baskets you took up? Neither the 7 loaves of the 4,000, how many baskets you took up? How is it you do not understand that I spake it not to you concerning bread, that you should beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees? Then understood they how that he bade them not beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. That's the point. That's the point he was wanting to get across, and that's the point. You have a pen for your people. That's one of the points that we need to really hammer in on and focus in on. That we need to beware of the doctrines that may come down the pipe, every wind of doctrine, and we need to examine them against the scriptures, and if we find them to be so, then by all means, let's accept them. If not, let's reject them. Yes, sir?
With the woman, the Canaanite woman, he said her faith was great. With these disciples, he says, oh, you little faith.
Yeah.
And, I mean, she just required a little crumb. But they had seen all those miracles that he did, plus feeding the 5,000, plus feeding the 4,000, and they still didn't get it.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's,
sometimes we need to, pay attention to,
some of this stuff is,
we need to look for people with faith.
yeah, some of this stuff is, I don't wanna, make light of it, but it's just almost laughable, the way people respond to something that just jumps out at you. When I first obeyed the gospel and read that, I never thought about the bread. I immediately knew what he was talking about. Go ahead, Don.
Let's bear in mind that the Sadducees and the Pharisees had almost no common doctrine. They opposed each other in every direction. One believing in resurrection in heaven, the other believing that when you're dead and it's done with. You cease to exist. And they didn't have anything in common except the thing they had in common was adding things to and taking things away from the scripture.
And the common denominator they had when Jesus was alive, they hated him. They wanted to kill him. They want to get him out of the way, and by hook or crook. We're going to have to stop there. Verse 17, Lord willing, Sunday morning. We'll pick up. And appreciate all the comments.